Hello and welcome to episode 8 of Touchline Talk with Odds Changeover. We will be discussing all the latest news and gossip from the Premier League, AFL and the rest of the world. As usual, I'm joined by football broadcaster, writer and all-round man in the know, Dean Jones, to dissect all the latest football speculation on the grapevine. Morning, Dean. Hope you had a good weekend. Another crazy week of Premier League action with some high-scoring results and also the first managerial change in the dugout as well.
Yeah, I mean, more than anything, we're not here to discuss Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's future. He's had a good weekend for once. So,
Yes.
he'll be very happy. I know he tunes in every week just waiting to see what we're saying about him and where he's going.
Exactly. I'm sure he'd have a nice, wry smile on his face this morning anyway,
Yeah.
with everything that's going on. Now Man United are title contenders after their good run of form as well. But one team that definitely aren't title contenders is West Brom. Obviously, they made their first managerial changes. You predicted last week, Dean, with Slaven Bilic losing his job. Probably the timing was maybe a bit strange, but it wasn't a major surprise. Just 24 hours after that draw at Manchester City, Slaven Bilic was the first manager to lose his job in the Premier League this season, and Big Sam is back. Didn't get off to the best of starts at the weekend with a 3-0 defeat to Aston Villa, and also seeing his captain Jake Livermore sent off. So West Brom, just one win in 14 games. Really looking like it's going to be a real dogfight for them to stay up this season. Do you think Big Sam's the right man, Dean, to maybe get them out of trouble?
I mean, it's a gamble, but ultimately they're going for a man that typically does improve every team he goes into and does move them forward. So I can see why they did it. I think it's slightly strange. Usually, I know I said that I expected Bilic to be the first to be gone, but I don't think he'd lost the squad, which is normally the case when managers are getting sacked at this time of year. I think the players proved in the Man City game that they were still playing for him. So I think it was strange timing. Allardyce didn't have a lot of time to prepare for his first match. It was pretty disastrous, really, in terms of a first match as well. But we know he's a short-term appointment. He's there until the end of the season. The aim is that he gets enough points to keep this team up. If he does that, he gets £2 million and he gets to stay another 12 months. I mean, that's all the motivation he needs. That's the kind of incentive that West Brom had to put forward here. The other names that were being spoken about, I said Roy Hodgson last week, more what that was the type of manager that they wanted. So Mark Hughes was mentioned. Nigel Pearson was also thought about. In the end, they went with Allardyce, just down that route of somebody that could be trusted and been there and done it. I mean, the big question for me is Allardyce hasn't done it there for a couple of years now. The game's changing. Like the Premier League's moving forward so quickly. And obviously in the time that Allardyce hasn't been there as well, rule changes have come in, VAR's come in. It is a very different landscape now. So we'll see whether Allardyce can do this. Ultimately, I think that behind the scenes, the owner is trying to sell the club. He wants to keep them in the Premier League to make them an acquisition that is more tempting. But obviously, if you were looking at potentially buying a club like West Brom, you're going to wait things out because you don't know how the landscape's going to be. You don't know if they are going to be relegated. So I think you'd be pretty mad to make that deal now. But ultimately, yeah, let's see what Allardyce can do. He has got a big job on his hands, though. I mean, there's a long way back here for West Brom. Personally, I don't see them staying up.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you, Dean. I can't see Big Sam getting them out of trouble as well as he's done before at previous clubs. He's never been relegated from the Premier League, a record that he's obviously very proud of, but he's definitely got his work cut out with this one. West Brom squad, probably, as we analysed it before a ball was kicked, probably wasn't strong enough to stay in this league. So he's going to have to be clever, I think, Big Sam. And I think the January transfer market is going to be key for their chances.
Yeah, definitely will be. I mean, that was the shame for Bilic, really. I mean, he didn't get as much as he wanted going into the season. And I think that he thought with that window just around the corner, if he could have got that far, makes a couple of changes. Like he couldn't have done much more, Bilic. He's got them up pretty much the first time of asking. He's done everything he could to get them into the Premier League. Didn't bulk up the squad like he would have liked. And then he's lost his job as a result of not being good enough. But nobody really would have been able to do a better job than Bilic was doing because West Brom just aren't good enough to be competing in this division right now. So it was really, really harsh in that sense. And it comes back to the question, whenever a manager gets promoted for the Championship, they're just wondering how long they can really stay in the job. But yeah, let's see what West Brom can do in the transfer window. They'll definitely be looking to do a couple of deals. And I think mainly knowing the way that West Brom work, we'll be seeing short-term options that can just try and fire them up. Like they've got Allardyce in on this deal until the end of the season with a big incentive. They'll do that with a couple of players, I think, as well.
Yeah, they'll be looking for the short-term solutions to solve any problems that they're facing over these next 6 months or so. But yeah, I don't think he's called Big Sam anymore. He's called Fireman Sam. He just comes in as a firefighter really now. But yeah, he's been out of the game now for 2.5 years. A lot has changed in that short space of time as well. So he's got to win over these players and probably more importantly, win over the West Brom fans as well, Dean.
Yeah, definitely that. Yeah. We'll see how long it is until we have more fans in the stadiums and stuff. But West Brom fans did not expect that the next time they would be going into that stadium, one, they'd be a Premier League club, and two, that they'd have Sam Allardyce as their manager. That definitely wasn't on the horizon when all the stadiums were shut back in March. So very, very different club now. But ultimately, all anyone cares about is staying in the division. So if he can do that, it'll win everybody over. Yeah,
definitely. So yeah, worrying times ahead for West Brom. But yeah, Big Sam, we'll see how he gets on over these next few weeks to see if he can spark an improvement in their form. Also worrying times for Brighton right now, and their manager Graham Potter sitting in 16th spot, just 2 points above the relegation zone after their failure to beat 10-man bottom of the table Sheffield United at the weekend in a game which many people would have expected them to win. But again, Brighton's old problems came back to haunt them, Dean. Failure to score, just create goal-scoring opportunities, and look like they're going to be in a relegation fight again this year, Brighton. And despite all their plaudits for their nice style of football and attacking style of football, just don't win enough games right now. I think that's 2 wins from the opening 14 games. Would you be worried right now if you were a Brighton fan?
I mean, a little bit, but not overly, because I think that they are still showing a lot of the time good signs. I think there are probably at least 3 teams worse than them in this division. So I personally think Brighton will stay up. I think also that they need to keep in mind why they brought Potter in, what the vision was, what they expected from him. He was given a 4-year contract when he came in. So if you're giving a manager a 4-year contract, you're giving them time to kind of set the tone, put their stamp on the club, and that takes time. Probably a little longer than Potter hoped, because you look at his record, it's not really much has changed in that sense from where Chris Hughton was. In that sense, the club hasn't moved forward. But what has moved forward is the style of play. The football is better a lot of the time. He's flexible in his tactics. I think that the fans are pleased to see people give him a chance. Okay, some of his selection have been queried, particularly up top. But the club knew that there was going to be a period of transition, and they've just got to stick by him, to be honest. Unless things get disastrous and they're actually on the bottom of the table, then they need to stick by him, and I think they will. The signs that I'm hearing are that he's not in danger right now. They still believe in the reasons they appointed him. They can still see signs that there is some hope there. And I think in the new year, Brighton can expect to turn things around. They want to become a top 10 club, and that might not be this season, but I think if they can at least get up towards 13th, 14th, then they should settle for that and then have a real go at it next season.
Yeah, probably home form's been a real worry probably for Brighton. Just 1 win from their last 16 at the Amex. And home form, we all know, is key for teams staying up and securing survival in the Premier League. The last win was against Arsenal after Project Restart. And the good news for Brighton is their next home game is against Arsenal, which is, looking at it right now, it's probably a relegation 6-pointer that game. So I don't think Arsenal fans would have thought that at the start of the season. But
no.
Brighton and how things are going there, do you think they need to go into the market and maybe bring in a striker to finish these chances they create in January?
I think it's definitely something they need to consider. It's a really, really strange market. We'll talk about it a bit later about what we can expect, but I really don't think you're going to get any substantial deals. I think there are players out there, though, that really need a new lease of life and an opportunity to actually play this season. And I think that Brighton have an opportunity to sign somebody that can really make a difference, because especially with the fact that the Euros are coming up at the end of the season, there are a lot of motivated strikers out there that have got a point to prove. And I think that if you can find the right one, it can make a massive difference to your season. So it wouldn't surprise me at all, if Brighton do manage to do that.
Yeah, we all know that January is a key time for a lot of these clubs down the wrong end of the table to change their squads and maybe find a gem that can maybe fire them to survival as well. So interesting to keep an eye on those clubs when the transfer window does reopen next month. Just moving down to the Championship now, there was another managerial casualty over the weekend with Vladimir Ivic sacked by Watford. I can't believe we've had to wait until December for Watford to change the manager, Dean. It seems a long time. That is now their fifth manager in just over a year, with the Spaniard Cisco Munez now replacing Ivic at Vicarage Road. Strange sacking this one. I actually got a call on Saturday at about 3:15 saying Vladimir Ivic was going to get sacked, and this was just while they kicked off against Huddersfield. So crazy time. So he probably didn't know himself that he was going to get sacked, but I think the club and the board had made a decision he was going to get the sack, and a lot of rumours coming out obviously after the match about why he was sacked. It all seems a bit of a row with Troy Deeney was the death knell for Ivic at Vicarage Road. What's your take on this one? But nothing surprises us anymore with Watford and managers.
No, definitely not. I mean, if you're getting a call at 3:15 on a Saturday and the game's only 15 minutes in, then it's pretty clear that Troy Deeney decision was the final nail in his coffin in that sense. But I think they were just waiting for a moment like that, to be honest, because I think there have been enough murmurs around the club that enough players were not happy with the direction, that something needed to change. There's been a lot of questions about not only his team selection, but his team formations, and just hasn't got the best out of this squad at all. And ultimately, when you're doing that at a club like Watford that has such high ambition, player power is going to rule, and especially if there's somebody in there like Troy Deeney, that it's such a respected member of the squad. You don't fall out with players like that. And if you do, you've got to get your decisions right. Obviously, this one didn't go well for him at all. They lost the game. Look, he's allowed to, as a manager, you're allowed to not fancy a player. Maybe he didn't like his style. Maybe he doesn't like the way that he plays the game. But the fact is, he has to treat him better than it seems like he treated him, because there's only one winner in that battle, and it's going to be Troy Deeney. Maybe Troy Deeney will get the manager's job one day, because it seems like all decisions basically come back to how he's fitting into the plans.
Troy does seem to be the king down at the Watford, and if you come for the king, you better not miss, and that's what happened with Ivic, I think, this weekend. To drop the club captain after he'd scored in 3 consecutive games was never going to go down well, and to question his discipline issues as well. Obviously, Watford came out quickly, made that decision to sack Ivic, and then released a statement backing Deeney as well. So it shows where they stand in this one as well. But exactly, yeah. The crazy stats are, Dean, Watford, since the Pozzo family have taken control of Vicarage Road, there have been 13 changes of managers there. And that's just crazy, really. You can't have no stability, but it seems to work for them. They'll either be a bit of a yo-yo club, they'll come up, get relegated, and now the job for the new manager, Munez, is to get Watford back in the Premier League.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, isn't it? It does often work out for them, so there's nothing to really deter them from doing it again and again and again, because they'll say, well, it worked last time, we'll give it a go. Look, there's an agency that they seem to work with quite closely in terms of recruitment, and I think that this new manager's come through that path, and he's emerged as somebody that is very forward-thinking and is a very good motivator. And Watford are always willing to give managers like this a try, and I think that's one thing I do praise them for. They have definitely been bold in their decisions. They haven't just gone down the Sam Allardyce route. You know, there are managers out there right now that they could have just taken that have a good record in the Championship, or they've been around a long time. They've won over players before. They've changed the vibe before, but they've gone down a totally different route of giving someone a real crack at making his name in the English game. And it's bold, it's brave, but it might just work.
Yeah, it's worked in the past for Watford with unknown quantities like Munez, who's coming from the Georgian league. So big step up for him as well. And a tough game for his first game in charge as well against league leaders Norwich. But I think one thing for certain is Troy Deeney will be back in that starting lineup against Norwich, bar an injury. So I'm sure Troy Deeney will be leading his team out and his new manager for the start of a new regime at Vicarage Road, starting with Norwich on Boxing Day.
Yeah.
So talking of Troy Deeney, obviously he was linked with moves in the summer. He didn't move, but yeah, the transfer window will be reopening in just over 10 days, and that's a chance for clubs up and down the country to make changes to their squads and try and improve any areas they need improving, and also opportunities for players who are not playing right now to maybe go out there and find new clubs and get back to playing regular first team football. One name we've spoken about quite a few times, Dele Alli. His future was a hot topic in the summer. It's going to be another hot topic in this January transfer window. Wasn't in the squad for Sunday's defeat to Leicester after making 2 sub-appearances against Crystal Palace and Liverpool. What's your latest take on Dele? Do you think he will be a Tottenham player by the end of the January transfer window?
I don't think he will be. I think the big question for me is how they get him out, what kind of deal he goes out on, because this is a player that Daniel Levy rated at £100 million not that long ago. He thought that if Dele Alli was to ever leave, it was going to be to Real Madrid, and that's the kind of money they'll be paying for him. Obviously, he's fallen off a cliff since then, since Jose Mourinho's been in town. And his value now, to be honest, you probably wouldn't be getting much more than 50 million for Dele Alli. And that's a real concern for Levy and for Tottenham. And it's probably going to put them off any sale of Dele Alli. I'm not sure any club would really have that money to pay 50 million for Dele Alli anyway in this next window, because you're not going to see that kind of money changing hands. So I think it's much more likely that he leaves on loan. And even potentially, something that somebody's mentioned to me was an 18-month loan for Dele Alli, because he's got so long left on his contract that if he went away for 18 months, revives his career, gets his confidence back, gets his form back, then there's always the potential he can come back in at Tottenham. The chances of Mourinho being around still in 18 months' time are pretty slim. Like, something's going to happen in that time. So Daniel Levy ideally does not want to lose Dele Alli. He was so pleased with the business that they did getting him from MK Dons at such an amazing price and seeing him rise to become one of England's best players, that he doesn't want to give up on that. He doesn't want to see him now go on and shine somewhere else. So I think it's very feasible that Dele Alli leaves on loan. I think it's most likely to be abroad. There is some interest in England, but it's probably best for him mentally, I believe, to go abroad and just start fresh and just, completely focus on getting his game back.
Yeah, PSG are still there, strongly linked with him in the summer, but just couldn't get that deal done. I think they're likely to come back in from if there's a loan deal there to be done. Also Monaco, where Paul Mitchell, the ex-Tottenham head of recruitment, is working right now. He's obviously a big admirer of Dele, who also worked with him at MK Dons, so he knows all about him as well. So 2 good maybe options for Dele in France, but I think this one probably go right down to the end of the window. I don't think Spurs will do it early. I think they'll probably wait because they'll want to keep the majority of their squad to see what injuries they might get during this busy period of games as well. So there might be an opportunity for Dele Alli to get a few games under his belt. But I think for everybody connected with the whole situation, the player, the club, I think a parting of the ways is needed right now. And Dele Alli needs to go out there and try and recapture that form that made him one of the top stars of not just Tottenham, but of England just a couple of years ago. So big decision ahead for Dele.
Yeah, definitely that. And Tottenham also got a decision to make on Harry Winks, who he's not happy either at the lack of football he's getting, and there's offers in for him. Everton have actually looked at both of those players. I mean, obviously you're not going to sign both, but one of those or Sami Khedira they're also looking at. So there are little routes like that opening up. But as you say, it's not going to be a deal that we see on like January the 4th. It's going to be something that comes, you'd imagine, later in the window, because Spurs need to know where their squad is. Mourinho also wants to bring in another midfielder if at all possible. He wants to bring in somebody to this squad that's got that leadership and that guile and the nous to get to kind of feel their way through at the end of a season when you're pushing potentially for a trophy or to get into the top 2, maybe the title. I mean, I can't see it, but even at the top 4, they haven't got enough players in that squad that have that experience. And I think that if Ali goes out, if Winks go out, they'll be replaced by somebody, I think, that's been around and done it before.
Yeah, going to be an interesting transfer window around Tottenham with, as you said, Dele Alli, Harry Winks, both looking out for regular first-team football, maybe to boost their chances of getting in that England squad for next summer's European Championships. So another player who has quickly fallen from grace, from a member of that England 2018 World Cup squad, is Manchester United's Jesse Lingard. Lingard's hardly featured for United this season, not played in the Premier League at all, just 2 EFL Cup appearances for the midfielder. He's well down the pecking order at Old Trafford. He's unlikely to get into Solskjaer's side right now, with United flying high at the top end of the Premier League table. Sheffield United have been linked, as have Celtic and Rangers, for Jesse Lingard. Interesting one, this one, Dean, because he's entering the final 6 months of his contract, although United do have an option to extend that just to secure him, so he doesn't walk out on a free. 28 now, Jesse Lingard. He really needs to pick the right move now to get his career back on track.
He really does. I mean, Jesse Lingard's been at Man United since he was 7 years old, so leaving is going to be a huge, huge decision for him. And, you know, he'll be gutted to give up on this, but he does want a decision on what's going to happen. Ideally, by the end of the year, he wants to know if United have any plans at all to trigger that extension. It looks unlikely. I don't see why they would. The only reason they would really trigger that is to improve his value so that they could sell him for more. I think that the player himself is quite keen on playing abroad, from what I've heard. I don't think the idea of playing for Sheffield United or somebody of that ilk is going to particularly motivate him. I'm not sure Jesse Lingard's the kind of player you want, to be honest, either. If I'd say that from both sides of the equation. A move like that, I just don't see working. So I think that this is one of those deals where interesting options will just begin to open up as teams become aware that he is available. And obviously there'll be connections that come into play. People he's been at Man United for so long that there are coaches and managers and players all over Europe now that know exactly what Jesse Lingard does bring to a team. And look, Jesse Lingard's pretty much the fittest player at Man United, if nothing else. So he's always that side of things. You know, his athleticism, his desire to win is pretty impressive. He's just got to get that consistency, and you know, there's a player in there. We just haven't seen it for a while. So he needs a move. He's not going to work. He's not going to work his way back in at United this season, and it'll just be interesting to see whether that move comes in the Premier League or abroad. Yeah,
he's had a difficult 18 months or so on and off the pitch for various reasons. But yeah, like you said, Dean, there's definitely a player there in Jesse Lingard. Like he proved at the World Cup with England. I think, like you said, a lot of foreign teams will remember him from that tournament where he played really well, and I think his style of football might suit a number of foreign leagues as well, where he's good on the ball and up and down the pitch as well. So yeah, I think Jesse Lingard won't be short of options come January. But again, wages might be an issue. He's on a good deal at Old Trafford as well, so a lot of it might come down to that as well. Yeah. But yeah, another forgotten player at Old Trafford is Phil Jones, who's been totally frozen out of the first team picture this season under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, not even named in the Premier League squad. I think he's had a few injuries as well, Phil Jones, but expected to be back fit by January. You would expect him to possibly move on as well. Again, like Jesse Lingard, 28 now, Phil Jones. He ain't going to play in that Man United team, even though he's on a longer contract than Lingard right now. But I think Phil Jones will be looking to go out and play first-team football from January onwards. A few clubs been linked with him as well, Dean. Derby, where Wayne Rooney in charge at the minute, and an ex-teammate of Phil Jones, so that could work out for him as well. Well, the one that I'll be keeping a close eye on is West Brom. Big Sam gave Phil Jones his debut at Blackburn and was a huge admirer of him, and somebody like Phil Jones could be a real good fit for West Brom. Where do you see Phil Jones possibly going?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good shout. Like I was just saying there about Lingard and how, you know, when you've been around for a long time, you know, people leave Man United or whichever club you've been at, and they go into other jobs and they have this knowledge of where you would fit into their plans. And like you say, Allardyce, he'll definitely come up in those talks. There's no doubt about that. But Newcastle have looked at it as well. I know that Steve Bruce has sounded out Michael Carrick about, you know, what is his condition right now? What is his frame of mind right now? Like, how does he think he might do a job at Newcastle? So I think that's an option. But by the same token, Wayne Rooney obviously knows Phil Jones very well. And that might actually be a perfect option for Phil Jones. Taking him out of the Premier League limelight might not be a bad idea, because you just know the first mistake that Phil Jones makes, oh my God, it's going to go, you know, Twitter's going to go mad, the tabloids will go mad. And you just wonder how these players even come back from these things time and time again. And for Phil Jones, somebody whose confidence must be low anyway, just needs to feel happy, just has to feel like he can improve the team. I think by going in somewhere like Derby, where I have huge respect, he'll be one of the best players there. He'll have Wayne Rooney behind him, who's completely confident in his ability, and he could essentially help turn around their season. So while it might look like a a real down step for him, stepping that far into the Championship. It doesn't take a lot for that Derby situation to turn around, and soon, maybe next season, you're there as a full-time player and pushing for promotion again, and you're a pivotal part of it. He's still young enough that he's got a few years ahead of him, Phil Jones. He's been around a long time, but it'd be really interesting. But I think that those three options are ones that will definitely be on the table.
Yeah, like you said, Dean, Derby could be a real good fit for him. It'll take him out of the limelight a bit and be with somebody that he can trust and have respect from Wayne Rooney. So going down there to help Derby stay up and move up that table for the second half of the season could just be what Phil Jones needs right now, and hopefully no more memes on Twitter or anything like that, because the lads had a bit too much of that, unfortunately. But yeah, like we both said before, we don't expect January to be too busy, but I think there'll be a few deals to be done here and there with unhappy players and players that need to move on. So we'll be talking about those over the next couple of weeks as well. But yeah, that's us for another week on Touchline Talk, and that's us for the year. I'd just like to wish all our listeners a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we'll see you in January 2021.